area that you were born, the zip code, the school district receives a certain amount of funding per student in the zone schools that they're in. And that reflects on the level of education they get and also their access to resources like extracurricular activities. And I would also like to add that is not just with education, it's also with renting and home owning, because I actually did a research project in one of my previous classes, Intro to Anthropology. And basically, it was about eviction and how there's a racial discrimination with renting and evictions because predominantly Blacks and Hispanics don't have access to lawyers. So a lot of times they don't even show up to eviction court, which just results in them getting evicted automatically.
Can I add something to that as well, actually? I also did a paper on this, on the housing thing. And they actually have proof that Blacks and Hispanics do not get loans from the banks to get the housing that like they were previously able to afford. So when they gentrify these neighborhoods, they displace people who live there, and then they're like, okay, go to the bank and get a loan for the like raised rents, and they don't give them the loans. Like they discriminate them. So then the people who previously live in these communities are then like out of homes and they get evicted and they have no choice. So that kind of sucks. Yeah.
And New Yorkers love to see themselves as very liberal, very progressive, far ahead of everybody else in how we have equality and freedom. But Weinstein is saying, and give him the quote,
that New York State was one of the worst states in the North in terms of granting freedom to its people of color.
Which would include New York City.
Which would include New York City, which was always totally wrapped up in not just slavery, but the slave trade.
The homework, we've corresponded individually, so we're working on it to get the work in. I think we're got 5 more weeks left of the semester, so there's plenty of time to get the work done. And I've talked to. I don't talk to anybody. I mean, I've emailed or corresponded with you individually, so you know who you are and the problems. Okay, just a reminder that the homework is due Monday. The homework on one of the causes of New York City's growth since the American Revolution was slavery. And those questions I sent to you, I think there are 7 questions and you're to do 4 of the 7, and that's due Monday, May 10th, okay? So the next homework assignment is on slavery in the new nation, and it's due Monday, May 10th. Before we move on, does anybody have any questions they want to ask me about this class, about the work in the class, about what we've been up to, about any of the content? Anybody have any questions?
Professor, I don't have the questions for Monday. Would you be able to send it to me?
Yeah, send me an email, or you can send me and Oleg an email, and I'll send you the questions, just as a reminder.
Same here, Professor.
All right, so Christian, you and Atta send me a note, an email, I mean, and I'll send you both the questions or the answers are due Monday. Anybody else?
Yeah, Professor, I have confusion about the question number 4 and 5.
All right, let me look at it. Question 4 and 5. All right, 4 is the financial resources and 5 is the insurance firms, right?
Yeah. And there has no clue that which place I can find out, which place I can find out this answer. I did not get any clue.
Okay, so the answer is in handout 15A, And, oh, there's Weinstein. And if you send me a note, I can give you some clues on where to find it. But I think we went over it in class and we read it in class. Does anybody remember the answer to what were the financial resources and the reference to insurance firms in terms of New York financing the cotton trade? Anybody remember that answer?
Something about them trying to export it to New York and then selling it in like kind of a wholesale type of situation.
Right, and that the New York banks were financing the cotton trade and that 40 cents on every dollar was ending up in the pockets of New Yorkers. Do you all remember any of that we were talking about in class? Anybody want to jump in on that? Sakar, does this help you at all?
I'm still confused, and I
Right. You know what you do? Send me the question, and we can privately. I'll go back and forth with you and lead you to where in the reading you can find the answer. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah, I'll help you privately. But we did go over it in class, and we did read about the banks. We did read about insurance in terms of the cotton trade, and it's all in handout 15A. And Oleg, could you do you have 15A, Sarkar?
Yeah, I have 15A. Yeah.
Okay.
And
So
the page number 33, 34 to.
Right. I'll help you. I'll help you.
33.
Yeah, I'll help you with it. But keep in mind that if that's difficult, you only have to do 4 of the 7 questions. So you could probably skip those 2 if you want and you find them too difficult. Okay?
Okay.
Anybody else have questions on the homework? Let's do Monday.
Wait, Professor.
Ryan.
So those questions for Monday are based on 15A?
You said it like I got it wrong. It's based on Gotham, yeah, 15A, right.
All right, perfect. All right.
Well, that's where the answers, you can find the answers to those 7 questions, but you only have to do 4 of the 7. And except for question 7, that's based on handout 100A.
Okay.
That's Restless City. That's not Gotham. Okay, Brian?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Did I get a hello from you, Brian?
Hello.
Yeah.
All I'm saying.
You're too much. Can I get a wave hello? I don't think I saw you today.
I got you. Hold up. What up?
All right, there he is. Good to see you.
No
All right.
Lieberman today. Lieberman.
I'm leaving. I brought Weinstein with me.
Weinstein.
Yeah, there he is. He's on the phone. He's the guy on the phone. Okay, so let's get started. I've invited Stephen Weinstein to our class, in part because I enjoyed his joining us, and in part because he enjoyed it too. And I said, he's talking to his bookie now. I think he made some money on the Kentucky Derby. He got a 12-1, I think. I think he's got his bookie there at Belmont. Anyway, I invited Stephen to join the class. I thought it'd be fun for me to have another historian with us. I thought it'd be interesting for you to have another historian with us. And I invited him, and he liked the class so much, he said he would love to join us. So Stephen, if you could get off the phone, we could, and unmute yourself, we could get started in terms of we're going to be looking at the document about births of Black babies in Staten Island. And we were looking at primary sources in the last class and looking at gradual emancipation. So Oleg, could you put 100A up on the share screen? Because I want to review the gradual emancipation with the class before we look at Castleton. No, 100A.
One second.
It's that snapshot I sent to you, and you fixed it and you made it into a PDF.
Yeah, I have to find.
Yeah. Weinstein, are you with us? Are you, can you unmute yourself?
No.
Yes, we hear you now.
Okay, somehow, thank God.
Well, okay. I'm relieved. Okay, so
Oh.
this, did you want to say something? Stephen?
Oh, do I want to say something? Yes. So last week we discussed what the implications of the Emancipation Act of 1799 were, but there was a gigantic loophole there because it only took into account people who were born after that date. But if you were born before July 4, 1799, you would be subject to indentured servitude as long as you lived.
So let's, before you go on, let's reread what that gradual emancipation said, and then we can get into the problems with it. Brian, you want to read, starting with the election of John Jay?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
All right. The election of John Jay as governor of New York State in 1795 set the stage for a conscientious, extended debate over emancipation.
What
The
is,
solution.
let me just stop you a minute. Conscientious, you want to define that, or you want to give a shot at what that means?
No, I have no clue what that means.
No clue. Weinstein, you want to give a shot at conscientious?
Well, that it would be, that's a
I
different
mean, contentious.
The word
Set the
there is
stage for
contentious.
contentious.
It's different than conscientious.
Okay, so the word is contentious, but what does it mean to you?
Argumentative.
Yeah, big fight. So it's contentious, it means it's a big fight. Sorry, Brian, go ahead.
Okay.
So it's a contentious.
Extended debate over emancipation. The solution was a compromise Gradual Emancipation Act by which all children born of slaves after July 4, 1799 would be considered free. Nonetheless, they would continue to serve their parents' masters until age 24 if female and until age 28 if male. Existing slaves were not freed, but children, the aged and the sick could be released to the local overseers of the poor. As a result, some slaves were abandoned and many were sold in order to avoid financial loss later. Others managed to buy themselves or negotiate work agreements premised on freedom. Slavery began to die in New York City, although equality remained elusive and racial violence was hardly over.
So Brian, if you would put that in your own words, how would you summarize that paragraph?
It was just basically talking about the abolishment of slavery and how the restrictions was females would serve their parents' masters until age 24 and males until age 28. And it just gave some other details regarding like existing slaves were not to be freed, but children and the sick and the aged. That's what I got from it.
And did you pick up on what Stephen Weinstein is saying, that there's a loophole there? You see the loophole?
The loophole, no. I got to read it again to myself to
so,
find that loophole.
Stephen Weinstein, what's the loophole in
existing slaves?
Let me just summarize it one more time. This gradual emancipation that says July 4th is big date, Independence Day. So if you're born after July 4th, 1799, you're sort of free.
Considered. That's the loophole right there. The word considered.
Right. There's a loophole. Go ahead, Brian. Tell me more about considered.
I don't know. I guess they could work around that word considered, because that wouldn't necessarily mean that you are free. It just means you're considered free.
I love it. I love it. Others who are taking notes, you can quote Brian and say it again, Brian. It's brilliant. Say it again.
The loophole would be the word considered, because considered doesn't necessarily mean that you are 100% free. You're just considered free.
Perfect. Perfect. Professor Weinstein, you want to respond to that? What Brian just said about considered?
No, that's true, because if it were really free, there would not be the word considered.
Yeah. And do you have any sense as a historian how that plays out in the 19th century? in terms of considered?
Well, it's considered by whom? It varied. It could easily vary depending on who's doing the considering.
Right. And what, so now, sorry to be interrupting you so much, but now, in addition to the word considered, what's the other loophole that you found in this gradual emancipation?
Well, this phrase, existing slaves were not freed.
Go ahead.
So nothing is being done about them. They're in limbo.
So, Ivan, you there?
Yes, sir.
What happens in your mind to, let's say you're an existing slave and you were born before 1799 and everybody else is getting free? Where are you in all that? I mean, you were born before 1799, and this thing is all about after 1799, and you were born in 1790. So what's your feeling about all that?
Born in the wrong time, I guess.
You got a bad deal, but do you think eventually in time you'd get angry?
No, because in a sense, if you think about the greater picture, it is progress. So you have to feel somewhat good that it's actually like things are leading in a better direction.
But what actually happens is there is resentment among that group. And Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong, but eventually don't they correct that loophole in the history of New York? Isn't that get corrected?
It gets corrected, but it's still not a full correction.
What is the correction?
In 1817, people who were born before July 4, 1799 were addressed, and they too would become indentured servants until 1827. But there's a complication because that law of 1817 was not to take effect until July 4, 1827. So they too could be subject to being indentured servants until 1848. It gets more confusing. So that's why in the 1830 census, according to what I read, there were still 75 slaves counted in New York State, including 17 in New York County, which would be Manhattan and the Bronx. So slavery still existed by even in 1830.
So by 1830, there were 17 slaves who fell within this loophole, but is it all by 1850, is everybody free?
Yeah, I suppose they were free, but it was by the mercy of their owners, or whether they somehow had the money, because it said earlier, many were sold in order to avoid financial. Others managed to buy themselves or negotiate work agreements premised on freedom. So it sounds like individual indentured servants were able to work their way out of it.
Carmela, in your own words, how would you summarize this history of gradual emancipation?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
In your own words, were you not listening? Did I catch you not listening? Were you knee deep in your breakfast?
I'm so sorry.
I should leave you alone. Can I
phone a friend?
I'm gonna get somebody else. You go back. You go back and listen now. Atta, okay. Atta, you there?
I might be in the same boat as a professor.
Oh no. And Narissa, you're not feeling well. Could you summarize the whole thing about what really did happen after gradual emancipation, or should I leave you alone? Hello, Narissa, you there? You're sleeping.
Wait, I just skimmed it. Can I kind of say what I believe happened?
Yeah, what happened?
I heard a little bit of it.
All right, go ahead.
They said that they said that the Emancipation Act, right? They said everybody that was born after this date would be considered free.
and like they were free in some sense, but then it says here obviously they had to negotiate work agreements and stuff for their freedom. So it's not much, but it's like it's something. It's kind of like they were like, okay, we're not gonna do slavery anymore, we're gonna do like legal slavery. It's gonna be like you're working for us for like you're choosing to work for us, we're going to negotiate your freedom, but like it's not really free, is it?
And it goes back to this word considered, right?
Yeah. It says that they were considered free, but they weren't. And then it says here, this one actually stuck out to me. It says slavery began to die in New York City, but it's still like it was still there, and the racial violence like continued on till today actually. So it just hasn't stopped.
And that phrase "till today," can you give me an example of about how this gradual emancipation was so gradual that here we are in 2021, and this gradual emancipation began in 1799? And the word gradual is sticking in my mind. Give me one detail that proves the point that this was really gradual.
I mean, like in considering today's like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, gradual as in like even with segregation in schools and stuff, like that's still a thing nowadays, even especially in New York City. But kind of like the Emancipation Act, where they're like, oh, they're considered free. These like public schools in New York City, like they're considered normal schools, like they're fine, they're working schools, but like they're not actually really getting the same education, the same attention as like the white kids do. So I mean, until today, it's like you could still see it in our like everyday lives, even though it's not like exactly like, oh, this is slavery, it's like racism, or even like police brutality is huge. Like that's really big right now. Like that's like we're shining the light on that stuff, but it's 2021, and like this was in the 1700s, and it's still happening today. So like gradually, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's like if it's gradually, it's really freaking slow. Like it's really, really, really slow.
And Tiffany, didn't you talk about this in another class that we had earlier? In fact, using the same example of segregation in the public school system. Oh, like you can go back to the gallery. You can get rid of the document so I can see everybody. Tiffany, you want to jump in there? Because I know you had something to say. It was a number of weeks ago on this example about the school system.
About the funding for schools.
Yeah. Pick up on what Carmela is talking about in terms of how segregation, I'm pushing you both for details in terms of this word gradual and the word considered and the loophole that Weinstein was looking at. And I remember in my mind, you did add on to what Carmelo is saying now in terms of the relationship of segregated schools to funding.
It has something to do with the zip codes and like where certain demographics live and how that interferes with the amount of funding that each school gets per student that attends that school. And that reflects on the level of education that they get and the access to other resources like extracurricular activities like music, art, and after school programs.
So those of you who want to quote Carmela and Tiffany, Tiffany, give it one more time so those taking notes can write down this point that you and Carmela are making, because the details that you gave are so important. And I saw Carmela shaking her hand, so I don't think she'd be reluctant to have her name next to this. So go ahead, Tiffany, take it from the top and give the rest of the class the details that prove how gradual, what was the phrase you used, Carmela? Freaking slow. What was the phrase you used?
I'm sorry, it's my California like talk coming in. No, but it is, if it's gradually, it's definitely a slow gradual process because not much has really changed.
Okay, so those of you taking notes can quote Carmela exactly on that. Take that from the top, Carmela, so they can write it down.
If there was gradual change going on from then to now, it's not much gradual change. It's very slow, like little bits of gradual change.
And now let's go to Tiffany for the fabulous details she was giving us about the relationship of zip codes and segregated schools and financial support. Go ahead, Tiffany, give the class the details you were giving just before.
So depending on the area that you were born, the zip code, the school district receives a certain amount of funding per student in the zone schools that they're in. And that reflects on the level of education they get and also their access to resources like extracurricular activities. And I would also like to add that is not just with education, it's also with renting and home owning, because I actually did a research project in one of my previous classes, Intro to Anthropology. And basically it was about eviction and how there's a racial discrimination with renting and evictions because predominantly Blacks and Hispanics don't have access to lawyers. So a lot of times they don't even show up to eviction court, which just results in them getting evicted automatically.
Can I add something to that as well, actually? I also did a paper on this, on the housing thing. And they actually have proof that Blacks and Hispanics do not get loans from the banks to get the housing that like they were previously able to afford. So when they gentrify these neighborhoods, they displace people who live there, and then they're like, okay, go to the bank and get a loan for the like raised rents, and they don't give them the loans. Like they discriminate them. So then the people who previously live in these communities are then like out of homes and they get evicted and they have no choice. So that kind of sucks. Yeah.
And Professor Weinstein, I see you shaking your head. What do you want to add to this?
Well, yeah, that's a process called redlining, where based on zip codes, banks categorize who's a worthy person to receive a loan and who isn't. And like Carmela said, it's impossible to get a loan in these areas. But the other issue I was thinking of course, is that's contemporaneous, is voting rights. That certainly has not been a linear progression. It hasn't been one step forward after another. It's maybe two steps forward, one step back. And the recent attempt by individual states to restrict voting is a clear infringement on liberties and personal freedom.
So getting back to the question I'm raising here is what happened to slavery in New York, 1785 to 1799, and here's the key phrase, and beyond, and beyond. Now we're talking about and beyond, and looking at what Tiffany, Carmela, and Stephen Weinstein are saying. Stephen, you want to summarize so students can sort of put in a quote about what's the summary statement here about redlining and what Carmela's bringing up and what Tiffany's bringing up in terms of housing, in terms of loans, in terms of schooling. Give us
The government does not play a neutral role in advancing freedom. Many times throughout its history, the US government and state governments have suppressed freedom. And there are these examples.
And this course, we're laying the blame right at New York City, right?
Yes, housing and education are in the forefront of this.
And we like to see ourselves as New York City as, oh, we're liberal, oh, we're progressive, oh, this is Alabama, this is Mississippi, this is, right? That's the way we like to talk in New York. But what's coming up in this class and what you're saying and what Carmela's saying, what Tiffany's saying, is that right here in New York, after 1799, you know, gradual, whoa, really gradual, you know, who's considering this? Who's making the decisions, right? Getting back to what Brian was saying, you know, I mean, so this is really gradual emancipation. But I want to add something, that those people who were born after 1799 at the time and saw this document and saw this birth record felt there's some progress. Something has happened for my life, right? Meaning my children will be free. That's big. That's big. Gradual, yes, but feeling that you're no longer owned by somebody else and that your children will not be owned by somebody else. That's a good feeling.
But in comparison to other states in the North, New York lagged well behind. So it's freedom, indentured servitude freedom, but it's much less than other states in the North had.
So let's all quote Professor Weinstein on this, is that, and I'll add to that, that we like to see ourselves, New Yorkers love to see themselves as very liberal, very progressive, far ahead of everybody else in how we have equality and freedom. But Weinstein is saying, and give him the quote,
that New York State was one of the worst states in the North in terms of granting freedom to its people of color.
which would include New York City.
Which would include New York City, which was always totally wrapped up in not just slavery, but the slave trade.
Right, we did that in the other class. And so at the heart of this, what we live with today is an economic relationship and the profit motive, right? To continue a inexpensive, cheap labor, exploited labor force, right? You could see it as, that's really a part of this. Okay, let's, any questions on what we've been saying? Anybody could not answer question 7? We're all good? Okay, let's move to, Weinstein and I are going to look at one of the birth records in Castleton, Staten Island. I love the fact that it's Staten Island, by the way. Staten Island, in my mind, is heart of an area in New York that always sort of is very conservative and votes Republican. And so I don't know how many people in Staten Island realize that Castleton had this Black community. So I mean, I think we should send this document off to the school system in Staten Island so that people would know what was there. Weinstein, did you have a reaction to this document, by the way, that it was in fact in Staten Island? Did that surprise you as a historian?
No. I wanted to know where Castleton was on Staten Island, and I looked, and it's a very prosperous area today, which didn't surprise me because it must have been the same back then.
And so these people were basically plantation owners who had a lot of slaves and they were making a lot of money.
Well, I don't know about a lot of slaves, but yes, they had slaves. And I don't know the percentage, but higher than we might suspect, had slaves.
Okay, let's do a sample interpretation of a primary source. Those of you taking notes should take close notes from what Weinstein and I are about to do, because I'm going to be asking you to do it after we do it. So we're going to do this sort of so that you can imitate or learn from the way in which two historians look at a primary source. So Oleg, can you show us a Castleton document, and Weinstein and I can go at it in terms of, all right, is this, can you blow it up bigger and move it over so we can see it? So this is the town book of Castleton, right? And we talked about this, and we told this is certified that a child named Mink. Did we do that one in class last time? Is that the one we did in class? Anybody? Stephen, do you have memory of doing this?
No, we didn't do this as a group, as a big group, no.
We did do it in breakout sessions, I think.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's look at another one, being that they already did this in a breakout session. There were 2 or 3 more. Let's look at the next page, Oleg. Okay, and what about this one? I do hear, sir, that a Negro child named Nicholas. Did we do that one? Ivan?
Yeah, I think what you did, you gave us 7 questions, and then each breakout group had a separate question, but we had access to the full document to answer those questions.
I see. So
But we never really went over it because we fell short on time.
Okay, so why don't we then pick up where we fell short on time, and Weinstein and I are gonna, which one do you want to do, Weinstein? Nicholas?
It doesn't matter, but I needed a little larger. My eyesight's not that great.
All right, larger, please, Oleg.
Even bigger, that's better.
Okay, all right, Weinstein, here we go. You and I modeling for the class, interpreting a primary source and answering the 5 W's and making it into what would become a secondary source, which is our thoughts as we respond to the primary source. Let me just add to everybody that this is what historians do. We look at these primary sources, we ask questions, and then we tell a story. Right? And this is one document that we're going to use as an example. So Stephen, you want to start us off? I do hereby what?
Okay, I do hereby certify that a male Negro child named Nicholas, the father, I think that's the father of whom, maybe, named Sam belongs to me, and the mother named Bet belongs to Cornelius Cruiser, was born in my house at Castleton the night day of, well, maybe that's the
8th.
Oh, the 8th day of May in the year of our Lord, 1800. And I request that this, I'm not sure, return? No.
Anybody?
Retainer? No.
There's something of the birth.
Well, maybe it should be, let's just make it up as record of the birth.
Okay, we do
Said
that.
child may be entered agreeable to the direction contained in a late act, that means recent act, for the gradual abolition of slavery. Castletown, January 15th, probably 1801.
Okay, Weinstein, as a historian, what's your reaction to reading this?
Well, it's very clear that this is a birth certificate solely created because of the recent abolition or Gradual Emancipation Act of 1799.
All right.
Proof of the child being born on that date, so in the future, this person could claim freedom.
And so the child's name is Nicholas, right? Right?
Yes.
And who's the father?
Sam.
And Sam is owned by who?
Well, Sam is owned by the person certifying or issuing the document.
And the mother's name is Bet, but she seems to belong to somebody else.
Yes.
All right, so 2 slaves owned by 2 different people have a baby, right?
Yes.
Born in Castleton, the 8th day of May. What's today?
May 4.
So in 4 days is the birthday of Nicholas. I love it. I love it. All right. And the year the year is, what's the year? 1000 what?
Well, the
Year of our
baby
Lord.
was born 1800.
All right, just makes it after 1799, right?
Yes.
All right, no loopholes there. And request that something of the birth of the said child may be entered agreeably in the so they're entering this for one purpose because of this. Can you push it up a little bit, Oleg? All right, they're entering this for one, and I love this because of the act, the state law that was passed, right? Called the Gradual Abolition of Slavery, right? So Weinstein, let me ask you, because I'm going to ask the class, what did you learn? Or what surprised you? Or what did you find interesting in the document?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm exaggerating this, but it sounds like they were forced to do it, so we had to do it. Otherwise, if it weren't for this act, this person's birth would not have been recorded.
I agree. Oleg, can you push it down a little bit so we can see the whole thing? No, you're going the wrong way. You're going the wrong way. I want it to go the other way. Down, down, down. More and more. Okay, right there. Oh, I lost you. We lost. Okay. Okay, I have a couple of reactions. One is the name they gave the child, Nicholas, right? I mean, it's just like, it's your baby, but I'm gonna name your baby. That just bothered me. I gotta tell you, it just bothered me. I'm gonna name your baby. You're not gonna name your baby. And the fact that two slaves owned by two different people are involved, to me meant there was some freedom or some mixing in the community, that it wasn't this isolated, I have my slaves, you have your slaves. There was some mixing going on. So that was something else that sort of struck me. I was very excited when I saw that it was May 4th and that May 8th is coming up. And what really excited me as a historian is that what I've read about the gradual abolition of slavery, I now felt, oh, it must be true. It's such a funny thing for me to say, but I don't know why, Steve, you had that reaction, but you know, you read these secondary sources, they talk about the gradual abolition of slavery, and then you see it in a primary source where they're referring to it at that time. Did you have the kind of thrill that I had?
Yeah, that phrase, gradual abolition of slavery, here they're very aware of the legislation and its impact, and they're reacting. Although I would say, I'm not so sure that Nicholas was not named by one of his parents.
I love that. I love that. I love
the other thing, of course, I'm always into ethnicity. So the person signing the document or certifying it sounds like he's French.
What's his name?
Mercereau. So it's spelled E-A-U ending. So it just shows you the diversity of the local population.
Perfect. Perfect.
It's not all British.
Perfect. 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 Anybody want to say anything before we move on to you doing this? Anybody have their own reactions to what I said or what Weinstein said or to the document itself?
Well, one other question I had is, where would this child be living? I assume with the mother.
Oh, I see, because the father and the mother are owned by separate people. Yeah. I assume the child's going to be being nursed by the mother. I'm going to assume that.
What kind of system is it that wouldn't allow parents to be united? You know, this is not good for the family, so to speak.
And to my rest of my class, I want to emphasize that what Weinstein is saying is wonderful because he's putting himself into the document. And that's what I want you to do. You see what he just did? He had a reaction, a personal reaction to the document. You want to say it again, Stephen? Because I loved it.
That the parents live apart. And we don't know how close they are to each other. We don't know where the child will be raised. And why shouldn't the parents be able to, get married and live together? Why can't the so-called owners work something out?
You see what he's doing, and what I want you to do is he's having this interaction with the document, and he's giving his thoughts. He's taking out of the document and telling a story. And we call it a secondary source because it starts with the document, but the historian then tells the story of what's in his heart. And I think that's so perfect as an example of what I'd like you to be able to do.
You can see how the system is still so harsh. So it says gradual abolition of slavery, but the first few lines, this sounds very cruel to me.
Terrific. Okay, so this is what I want to do. Ola, can you move this thing over so we can see I hereby certify? Move it over. Oh, you're going up and down. I want to move over. Yeah, okay, stop. Okay, so whoa. Okay, I here certify you that a female Negro child, everybody see that? Okay, so Oleg, if you break everyone up into groups, will they still be able to see that document? No?
No, it's not working like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that we're going to do it individually. You're not going to work in groups. So I want everybody to look at that document. I hereby certify to you that a female Negro child, right? And the assignment is for you to read that and write a response to what you learned or what surprised you or what you found interesting in that document, okay? So individually, not in groups, I want you to write your response to the primary source, and your response should include details of who is it about, what's it about, you know, when does it happen for sure. But primarily what I want you to write about is what did you learn, what surprised you, what did you find interesting about the document? And I want you to sort of take what you just saw Weinstein and I do and internalize it, make it your own, okay? Does anybody have any questions about what the assignment is?
If I could just add, this document is very different than the one we just discussed. Even though it might look similar, it's very different.
You think it's unfair and we shouldn't use it?
No, it's good.
Good.
Can you reread it? Like I don't understand.
To make out the words.
Yeah.
I hereby certify to you that a female Negro child named Mary, born of my slave Jane, the 5th day of February last, which was given up to be recorded, I do hereby manumit and give up all my right and title to the service thereof, given under my hand at Castletown on the 3rd day of February, 1804, Jacob, could be, I'm not sure, Lausanne. And then there's a signature.
And why do you think it's so different, Stephen?
Well, that would give it all away.
Give it away. Give it away.
Well, in the previous letter, was there any mention of the word manumit?
I don't know what that means.
Okay, so maybe one of the class does know. Any suggestions?
What manumit means or what manumission means?
Yeah.
Go ahead, you give it to us.
Freedom.
You got it. You got it. You got it. Let's read the second one so they have a choice. They could do one or the other.
Wait, is this the thing where they're saying like, oh, the children are free, but
Yes.
Oh, okay, I'm caught up.
All right.
And no service required. So this is very different. Our friend Nicholas, he didn't get freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So you think it's fair to assign this, or should we look at the one below?
Yeah, it's very different. I'd like to see the third one.
Let's go down and see the third one. Oleg, roll it down or up. Yeah. Anybody want to try reading this third one? Atai, you want to give it a try? Are you there? Brian?
Yeah, Professor.
You want to read this? Oleg, make it a little bigger.
I wish I could actually read this, but I'm gonna mess up bad. I do hereby. Oh, never mind.
Go ahead.
I do hereby certify that a female Negro child named Phoebe,
Yeah.
I don't know, I can't tell, was born of my, yeah, trust me, I can't even see it. I can't even read.
Slave Jude.
Was born of my slave Jude the 8th day of December.
Yeah.
And then I can't read the next lines. I'm sorry.
Yeah, somebody jump in on that. 1,000. Anybody else? Jason, Jonathan, can you read that?
1,018. No,
800?
800 might be it.
801. Oh, like make it a little smaller because it gets cut off. Just tighten it a little. Yeah, there it is. Okay. 1,801. Yeah, go ahead. Which what?
Oh, that's all I got. Which, yeah, I have no idea. Which
Request?
they entered decisively? No, I'm not sure.
Entered
Accordingly.
accordingly?
Mm-hmm.
I could, on this, on what?
On something given under my hand the 11th day of February,
Yeah.
1800. Nathaniel Britton. Yeah.
Right.
That time.
Okay, so the assignment for the class is to pick one of these two. And Ola, can you make it so they can see both of them? That's pretty good. But now you really can't read it, can you? So can you blow up this one page and get rid of the page on the left? I guess you can.
Well, it does let us zoom in by ourselves, so.
Oh, you can do it by yourselves?
Yeah, we just pinched the screen. Well, I'm on a iPad, so.
Okay, so you can just pinch the screen and make it bigger. Okay, so in the next, I'll give you 15 minutes to individually write what is it that you've learned, what has surprised you, and what did you find interesting about any of these three documents, that one that Weinstein and I read and the two that we just read as a class, and write it up and send it as an email to Weinstein.
I'm going to put in my email.
Put your email address on the chat. I want everybody to write this up. You've got 15 minutes to write it and send it as an email to Weinstein. Okay?
Oh, that's EDU ending.
EDU. And after you've finished doing that, take a break and we'll resume as a class at 2:30. Okay, so for the next 15 minutes, write up what you've learned, what surprised you, what you find interesting about the document, send it to Weinstein, and then we'll come back as a class at 2:30. So 15 minutes to write and then a 15-minute break. See you at 2:30. The child is Mary, born of the slave Jane, February 5th last, which was given up to something recorded. I do hereby manumit, meaning give the freedom, all my right of title to the service of their given under my hand. Weinstein, I'm going to go with you. I think Jane is his baby.
Well, that's a possibility. The other thing that I'm just seeing now, of course, is
Mary is his baby, that he basically raped Jane.
No, well, we don't know that. But okay.
Oh, wait a minute. Let me do my spin. That he raped Jane. I'm telling my story. That he raped Jane. Jane gave birth to Mary. And because of the guilt he felt that this was, this was his child, he gives the child freedom. That is my secondary historian story of the document. Weinstein.
Can I put that in the email?
You can do anything you want. We're just, you're listening to two historians have fun. You're listening to what we do. This is why we do what we do. Go ahead, Weinstein.
There's another oddity because the child was born the 5th day of February last. And then you notice the date that this was signed was the 3rd day of February. I guess that looks like 1804. So it took 1 year for this to be settled. Apparently, because 5th day of February last would mean February 5, 1803, I think.
Carmela, you think that Mary's a year old?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they said February of last, and then they said this is the 3rd day of February 1804, right? Yeah, I think it's her birthday, and he's like, let me free her for her birthday.
Carmela, you got to write that up. This is the fun of being a historian. This is the joy and that's why we call it a secondary source, because you're doing interpretation of a primary source based on what you think might be true. And as long as you tell your reader that this is basically you, you know, and what you think happened, your reader, like Weinstein and I, can go at each other and say, well, wait a minute, I don't know. Weinstein, what do you think about that? That it's Mary's birthday and that the child is 1 year old and Lausanne is giving freedom on the birthday.
Yeah, I would like to look at the 1800 census and see who lives in Jacob's household.
All right, so what he's doing is getting more documentation on the story. This is what we do. You start with the story and then you look for other documents that support or contradict.
And see whether Jane, what color Jane is accorded. If Jane is listed as mulatto, that's strong evidence for me.
All right. Carmela, did you hear that?
Yes, I'm typing and listening at the same time.
But I don't know if mulatto was in that sense, that term in the census then.
No.
I have to look at the 1800 census. It'd be too hard to find. Staten Island was not a big place. I think we could probably find Castleton.
Oh, so you're looking for Jane living with Jacob, and if Jane's mulatto, that would convince you that Jacob, that this is Jacob and Jane's baby.
Oh yeah, that would be a good evidence for me.
And what if you found Mary in the 1810 census and Mary was listed as mulatto?
Well, that's a good question.
Would that be good evidence?
No.
Why?
Well, if Mary is mulatto,
that's the baby.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Mary, I mean. Oh, if Jane is mulatto. You'd have to think about that.
Yeah, I love it. Carmela, you see what we're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I love it because, like, you're just speculating what happened, because I could do this all day. I could be like, maybe this is what happened with Jacob. Maybe he was guilty. Sounds like he is, because he's like, let me make this short and sweet. It's Mary's birthday. I give her her freedom. There's no talk of Mary's dad anywhere, and it does kind of sound like he's guilty.
And you know what?
It's pretty absolute. Manumit and give up all my right and title.
It was free. It was full freedom, right? Which was quite rare, as I've heard, in this time period, because they said considered freedom. So a lot of different like children were freed on like grounds of them being workers. But Mary just gets to go unscathed. She's like, you're free to go forever. So that's really interesting.
Right.
And Carmela,
is Mary the daughter?
The only what?
Okay.
Yes.
I know. I was asking, is Mary their daughter? I was really confused about that.
Mary is child named Mary. Yeah, Mary's the daughter. And the requirement, Weinstein, correct me if I'm wrong, the requirement now in the profession is that whatever story we want to tell, we have to go out and find 2 more primary sources to back us up.
Yes. I would feel comfortable with that.
So if we found, Simon and Carmela, if we found 2 more documents, a census, a letter, a diary, that supported this story, then we would write it down, we would publish it, right? We would say, we think this is true, but we need 3 sources. So,
how do we go about finding that?
How would we go about finding it? Well, Weinstein, how would you go about finding the 1810 census?
Well, any census you get at they're online now, I'm pretty sure, but otherwise I'd go to the National Archives. Now it's at Battery Park, by Bowling Green. And I'd also go to the Staten Island Historical Society and see if they've ever heard of this person, Jacob Lausanne, if that's his name. Or it could be Rosier, come to think of it. I'm not sure what the name is.
So the second document would be the census. And you know what the third document that I'd love to find is, let's say his name is Lausier, Jacob Lausier's will. And if in his will, he gives property to Mary, Boy, oh boy, I got it. I got it. I got it. What do you think, Weinstein?
Well, yeah, but on the other hand, why isn't he freeing Jane?
I'm not even going near that story. That story alone.
Another question to ask.
Yeah, but Carmela, you see the fun we have?
Yeah, this is actually really interesting.
But this is just conjecture, really. I wouldn't go out on a limb yet.
But I'm going to change Weinstein's word from conjecture to hypothesis.
It's not yet proven, huh?
It's not yet proven. All we need is 2 more documents and we got our story.
Right. We got to find those documents then. I'm invested now. I'm invested now, Lieberman. You've done this to me.
That's
but
it.
You can see how it takes time.
Hey.
You got the bug, and they pay me to do this.
I'm gonna start writing a diary. I hope that a class in like 300, whatever, through 30, 40 is gonna read my diary and be like, I wonder what Carmela did on this day of May 4th, 2021.
Good idea. Good idea.
Okay, give it to our archives.
Anybody, Saima, are you okay with what we're doing here? Do you understand what we're doing?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay. Anybody else want to jump in with questions, or are we just bothering everybody? All right, great fun. Thank you, Carmela, Saima. Thank you for encouraging us to basically do what historians do: take a primary source and tell a story based on it, and then say, well, we better find 2 more sources if we want to publish this or feel comfortable in telling the story. But I love the story that we could tell. I love the story that we could tell.
Yeah, it's good.
Huh?
It's good.
It's a good one. It's a good one. Okay, I'm going to leave you all alone. You better write your own stuff. Send it to Weinstein. You have his email in the chat room. I'll see you at, you have till 2:15 to write this up. Take a break, and at 2:30, we'll resume class for a half hour on the Erie Canal.
Okay.
That was great fun, Stephen. Thank you.
Yeah, that was good. It's the old story. The more you look at it, the more comes to mind.
2 more sources to tell the story of this child that was born between the slave owner and his slave, and out of guilt, he gives the baby freedom on its birthday. I'm taking up on what Carmela said. He gives the baby freedom on its birthday 1 year later. And that's the story I'd write, but I'd need to find census tract to prove more of the mulatto. They would enter it as if the census did ask that question in 1810. And then if I found a will, if he left property to that baby, that would be it for me. I'd write that story in a minute. Weinstein, I see you're nodding your head. So
yeah, that would be sufficient.
That would do it. Anyway, what I wanted to show you in this unit on slavery is how we work, how historians turn primary sources into a story, and I wanted you to have a shot at it, and send it to Weinstein. His email is in the chat room. Some of you send it to me. You can copy me as well. I'd love to read it as well, but Weinstein is going to read it and respond as a historian to the stories you're going to write. So send it to both of us. I want to read them too. So send it to both of us. But I've asked Stephen to respond to you, and I want to see the stories you write. Okay, any questions on that before we move on? Everybody good? All right, and you can use that in terms of the homework that's due Monday. In terms of question 7, you can use that as part of your answer. So moving on, we're moving on to back to the initial question of after the American Revolution, New York was destroyed, burned, and had lost a significant number of people. Within 60 years, New York passed Boston and Philadelphia to become the premier city in America. By 1849, more than 3,000 ships sailed or steamed into New York's harbor from more than 150 ports, carrying 50% of our nation's imports. What we've been working on in looking at Hamilton and looking at slavery is to answer the question, how did New York do it? How can we explain the rise of New York to be the premier city after coming out of ruins from the revolution? And today we're going to pick up on the third reason, and I'm going to leave it at that. There are many more, but just going to pick up on the third reason, which is the Erie Canal. Did you all get the questions? I sent the questions to you that will be part of the homework assignment. That'll be due not next week, but the week after. And there are 5 questions, and we're gonna start answering those questions by a brief presentation by me. Maybe Weinstein will jump in about the Erie Canal, and then looking at a video about the canal, and then you putting in the chat room what you find interesting or questions. Anybody have any concerns or questions before I give a brief presentation on the Erie Canal?
I did not get the document.
What?
I didn't get that document with the questions.
All right, so put that in the chat, and Oleg can send it to you. I can send it to you. If you send me an email, I'll send you the questions again.
All right.
No problem. Anybody else didn't get the questions? Please, please, please put it in the chat, and Oleg and I will take care of you. Thank you, Oleg. Okay, so the Erie Canal, it's often referred to as a 360-mile ditch. The basic statement I want to make about the Erie Canal is that it transforms New York's relationship to the rest of the continent. If you look at a map of the United States in 1800, all of the cities, the entire population is huddled along the eastern coast. And getting inside the nation was impossible. It was blocked by the Appalachian and Allegheny Mountains. There were no railroads, there were no rivers. You had to walk. You had to go over barriers. To get inside the United States from the coast, you had to go with a cart, with a horse, with a mule, go over the Alleghenies, go over the Appalachian Mountains to get into the interior. There was no natural resource to get inside the continent. And in 1811, a very significant date to put down, Governor DeWitt Clinton finds a way to get into the interior and to get New York State and New York, the premier transformative city, the transformative state, to have the doorway. And I'm going to call it a doorway. DeWitt Clinton provided a doorway into the interior of the country, and a doorway into what is called the hinterland, to the breadbasket, to the wheat, to the flour, to all of the farmland, to the Great Lakes, to all of the resources out there, and created New York as the doorway between the entire country, all those resources coming to New York, going to Europe, going to the rest of the country, and then come back. How did he do it? How did DeWitt Clinton, the governor of New York, find this doorway? We built the doorway, and it's called the Erie Canal. We built a river. We built a 360-mile river. Write that down any way you can. It's amazing what we did. We built a canal. I mean, Weinstein, why am I getting so excited over this? Why do I find it so amazing?
Because nothing like this had ever been done before.
Exactly, exactly. New York, okay, I'm gonna say another thing. New York redoes the geography. He says, okay, write this down anywhere you can. Okay, the map of the United States, the geography says New Orleans should be the big city. The Mississippi should be the big river. The Mississippi is the way into the interior, and all goods and traffic should go up and down the Mississippi, and New Orleans should be the premier city. That's what the geography gave, and New York said, I don't think so. I don't think we're gonna do it that way. What we're gonna do is change the geography, and we're gonna take advantage of the only place where you could get through the Appalachian. There was only one gap in that mountain, and that was in New York. New York State had access to the hinterland through that gap and built the Erie Canal. And what really belonged to New Orleans was taken by New York. We dig a 360-mile river to the west. We build it without dynamite, without any machines. We build it with shovels and picks. And we connect the Midwest, the Great Lakes, from Buffalo on Lake Erie, so it's called the Erie Canal, through the canal to Albany on the Hudson River, and then down Albany to New York City. It's an artificial waterway. All right, Weinstein, tell me if I'm wrong on this. Nothing like it since the Egyptians had ever been built. You agree with that statement?
Yes.
It's unbelievable. It is, look, when they built the Erie Canal, think about this. When New York built the Erie Canal, 360 miles long, the longest canal anywhere was in the nation, was 27 miles long, and most were 2 miles long, right? I mean, okay, so how do they finance it? How do they get the money to do it? How do they do the planning? How does this all happen? It's all Governor Clinton. It's all DeWitt Clinton. He raises the money. The federal government, Jefferson, Madison, they say, no way we're going to give you $5 million to build something that just benefits New York State. I mean, if Hamilton had been around, he would love it. He would have financed it in a minute. And so Clinton comes up with a plan and is approved by the state legislature. Weinstein, do you remember the plan? What Clinton did?
More or less.
Huh?
More or less.
Go ahead, try it.
Well, I'm not sure what you mean exactly.
Well, how does he raise the money when the federal government says we're not going to give you the money? How does he raise the $5 million to pay?
The state issued bonds and banks bought many of them, most of them, I suppose.
Exactly. And this is, in this class, we talked about the bonds that had been issued for the American Revolution, and the way in which Hamilton had the federal government back those pieces of paper that put the government in debt to people. This is the same thing. It's the same thing. Clinton takes this model and says, okay, New York State's going to issue bonds. What is a bond? It's an IOU. It means the state is in debt to you. You give the state $100, they'll give you an Erie Canal bond and will pay you off with interest. And with that, he builds the most important highway, the most important public works in the nation, which remain the most important until 1956 and the building of the interstate highway. And they do it in 7 years. It's amazing. No cost overruns. It pays for itself. It opens in 1825. It has 83 locks and 18 aqueducts. A lock is a way where you move a boat into like a section. The door closes in front, the door closes in the back. They put water in it, raises it up, and then they open the front door and it floats out. It's a way that you can use water to go up a mountain or down a mountain, or down a hill and up and down a hill. They build aqueducts that go over valleys. I mean, it's a miracle. It's unbelievable. It brings all trade, all of the resources from the Great Lakes to New York. All of America, everything comes to New York City. The canal brought all of this trade, all of the trade from the Great Plains, all the resources through New York and then to Europe. Everything coming from Europe goes through New York and then out through the Erie Canal. New York City becomes the only harbor in the nation that connects America to the rest of the world, to Europe. It connects Europe with the United States. And when you leave Europe, when you come here, you went to New York first, and then you saw the rest of the country. And I would say it's still true today. It's still true today, not in terms of our port, but in terms of when you fly into this country, you certainly some fly into San Francisco, but most are coming through New York. Stephen, you want to correct me or add to this?
No, I would just like to say that this came up on the heels of Robert Fulton inventing the steamship, which enabled boats to go upriver. because prior to this, you could only really go in one direction, downriver. So how could you ever go north? It'd be impossible. And the second is that railroads did not really enter this picture until, I'm going to say, the 1840s, maybe even the 1850s. So there was no competition to speak of. So New York could really dominate for the next 20 years at least.
Questions, concerns, something you found interesting, anything you want to say about the Erie Canal?
How long did it take to build the Erie Canal?
7 years.
7
Think
years?
about that. Yeah, they 7 years, 360 miles. Unbelievable.
Maybe we should share the image of the map image to show everyone.
That's what I've been looking at.
We'll get there. Yeah. Hello?
Oh, I said that's what I've been looking at, the map of it. Like how long it stretches.
Yeah, I also tried to find out on map, but I don't get it.
All right, we'll send you a map. Well, there's a map in the curriculum on 113, 113A. The attachment of 113A has a map in it. Oleg, can you put that up? 113A is I think the handout, and there's a map. No, okay, yeah. Now you gotta, can you
flip it?
Can you flip it, Oleg? Can't flip it?
No, I cannot flip it. Hold on.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so everybody take your computer and turn it.
1 second. Maybe I can. No, it's not to give me.
It won't let you flip it?
Yeah, you see.
All right, so that's the best we can do, but you see the Erie Canal starting in Lake Erie and go all the way down to the Hudson River, going through upstate New York. And there's the map.
Funny, I could flip it when I looked at it individually.
I think you can flip it on your own screen, right?
Yeah.
All right, other questions?
Yeah, Professor, I have a question.
Go.
Is this map is this canal is running still today? Because I did not get on Google Map that map is still on Google Map.
You want to know if the canal is still there today?
Yeah, I did not. I have a question. That is, this canal is still running?
Is it still running? Okay, Oleg, you want to show, you want to show some pictures of the Erie Canal today and the ones I sent you?
Hold on.
Oh, he flipped it. 1 minute.
Yeah.
Don't worry. So there is the Erie Canal from Albany. You go up the Hudson to Albany, and then it flows through Utica, Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo to Lake Erie. Everybody see that? And you also have this handout, 113A. If you don't, we can send it to you. Okay, now, Oleg, you have those photographs I sent you?
Yeah, 1 second.
All right, so here's photographs of the Erie Canal today.
1 second.
Can you make it a little bigger? No?
We'll try it. It's very small.
Okay, Sarkar, you can see it? Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, I can see, but when I search on Google Map, I did not get any location on where is the map.
All right, so did you see, you saw the map and you have the map, Oleg showed it to you and you have the map in handout 113A, so you can look at it yourself.
Yeah, that was the previous map, the previous picture, but I concerned about the present map of the Google.
Yeah,
if I search.
Whoa, go back to the pictures, Oleg.
Okay, you ask map.
Sarkar, this is what the Erie Canal looks like today.
Yeah, I understand, but I concerned that if we search anything on Google Map, they show the location. But
Yeah.
when I tried to search Google Map Erie Canal, I did not get any location. Where is the locate of the Google Map?
Oh, I see. I don't know why the Google map doesn't locate the Erie Canal, because that map we showed you is the same route of the Erie Canal. Oleg, what about another picture? Show another picture.
If you look at the Hudson River near Albany, there's a river that heads west. If you follow that on Google Maps, that's it. You just have to follow it.
Sarkar, you got that?
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
go to Albany. A little bit north of Albany, you see a river that starts going west. I think that's the Erie Canal. Well, that's where it starts.
All right, let me show you a few more pictures of it, Sarkar, of the Erie Canal today. Oleg, go back to the pictures. I sent you 4 or 5 pictures.
Yeah.
All right, that's the Erie Canal today. A little bigger. All right, next picture.
It's not changed.
You can't show the next picture?
Yeah, I can show next picture. Oh,
A little bigger? Guess who that is? Anybody want to guess who that is?
You?
Huh?
You?
That's me and my wife. Yeah, we did a bike trip on the Erie Canal. And that's me and my wife with our biking outfits on, stopping off at one of the towns along the Erie Canal. Next picture.
1 second.
All right, there's the Erie Canal. I think that's it, right, Oleg? Don't you have 2
No,
more?
I have more.
Yeah, let's see. Oh, you have to go back and forth like that?
Yeah, it's how it's working.
All right, make that bigger. That's a lock. That's called a lock, and it's the way in which there are gates in those locks. It's the way in which you can go up and down a slight incline or a mountain or a hill by closing the front doors and filling it up with water, or letting water out. It lowers the boat, and then it moves on. All of these steps you see had doors in front of them that would hold the boat there until they lowered the water level. I think that the next picture will show you a boat actually in one of the locks.
Yeah, my question would be, that's so narrow, what kind of boat could actually fit in that?
No.
The answer is there you see it. Now you see the scale, you see that boat. There is a boat, and it has room for a couple of boats, and that boat is in one of the locks. The lock is either going up or going down, and then the doors will open and it'll float away. But you get a sense of, I think, Stephen, your question is a good one. You get a sense of scale, and I think maybe, to correct myself, the previous picture was not a lock. Maybe it was the water they used to feed the locks. Maybe it was a side river. I'm not sure, but this is a boat in one of the locks, taken by me.
It's very good.
Thank you. Okay, I think we've got all the photos.
Yep.
All right, so now we're going to show the video, which is a overview of the history of the Erie Canal, and it'll probably take us to the end of the class. So before you leave, just put in the chat room your questions or what interests you, and then we'll start the next class with your questions. Oleg, you can run the video.
Okay.
Plan indicated to people who had no intention of stopping. They're going to go right up to the top of the island, to the Harlem River, and go on from there. It was part of an optimism that was real, and it was an optimism that was self-fulfilling. You lay out a straight plan like that, and the next thing you know, someone's on a lot. And transportation followed it.
It's 33.
Where you had horse-drawn trolleys.
The Commissioner's Plan of 1811 was one of the most far-sighted urban visions ever conceived. And yet its audacity was nothing compared to that of another proposal DeWitt Clinton put forward that same year. Not an 8-foot map, but a 363-mile-long ditch that, if completed, would transform forever New York's relation to the entire American continent.
When you think of the United States in 1800, it's really a country that's huddled along the East Coast. Movement to the interior of the North American continent is blocked by what we no longer think is the substantial mountain chains, the Appalachians, the Alleghenies. But from the perspective of 1800, they were impressive indeed. There were no blasted highways through there. There were no railroads through there. There were no rivers that took you easily through there. You had to walk up those mountains and walk down them and then up another one and down. So they were a formidable barrier. And what we had to do, both in New York and in the nation, is to figure out a way to get inside the continent.
For years, New York merchants had been dreaming of the immense wealth locked in the continent's interior. In 1811, DeWitt Clinton came up with a way of getting at it. If nature had provided them no river to the west, New Yorkers would simply have to build one.
When one looks at a map of the United States, and one looks at the Mississippi River, one cannot but assume that the greatest city in the New World is going to be where New Orleans is. That here's one of the greatest river systems in the world. But it didn't happen that way. And it didn't happen that way because New Yorkers took the geographical advantage they had and got access to that agricultural hinterland that seemed to belong to New Orleans.
The only gap in the chain of mountains running from New Hampshire to Georgia is providentially located in New York State. And Governor DeWitt Clinton had enough sense to see that this was a very valuable asset and to build the Erie Canal over the collective dead bodies of most of the politicians from New York City, who did not see that connecting the Middle West to the Hudson and New York City would turn into a cash cow.
The scope of the project was nothing less than mind-boggling. An artificial waterway, unlike anything undertaken since the days of the ancient Egyptians. At a time when the longest canal in America ran just 27 miles, and most less than 2, Clinton's canal would have to run more than 350 miles across the rugged wilderness of upstate New York. Thomas Jefferson himself rejected the scheme outright, calling it little short of madness. So did the New York State Legislature and President James Madison, who warned that its $5 million cost would bankrupt the federal government. But DeWitt Clinton would not be deterred. The Great Erie Canal, he declared, would make New York one of the most splendid commercial cities on the face of the earth. Appealing directly to the public, he lobbied tirelessly for what his detractors called Clinton's Big Ditch, holding mass rallies in New York City and circulating a petition eventually signed by more than 100,000 New Yorkers. Clinton himself devised an ingenious scheme to pay for it all, using public funds to attract private investors and showing once and for all how great public works could be built in a democracy.
How did Clinton build the Erie Canal? By promising bankers he would make money if they lent him the funds to do so. And no ideology about it. Jefferson wouldn't dream of having the national government involving itself in an affair of this kind for doctrinal reasons. The Jeffersonians were against internal improvements. Hamilton was all for them, and boy, did they make money.
In 1817, the state of New York, encouraged by Governor DeWitt Clinton, issued what at the time was a staggering indebtedness or issuance of bonds to build this waterway across upstate New York, connecting essentially the Hudson River at Albany with the Great Lakes at Buffalo. That ditch, that 363-mile ditch, only a couple dozen feet wide, was the most important public works project in American history until the Interstate Highway Program was passed in 1956.
The canal was dug with Irishman mules and Monongahela whiskey in about 7 years. A massive feat. And you cross the canal, now it's still there, now clean because Lake Erie is clean. And you go around, about every 15 miles you come to a town where something extraordinary in manufacturing commercial history began.
It was one of the few public works projects in New York that didn't have a cost overrun, was finished on schedule. In fact, it paid for itself by being partially open before it was fully completed.
On October 26, 1825, 3 full years ahead of schedule, the mammoth undertaking was complete. The Great Erie Canal, one observer said, has defied nature and used it like a toy. With 83 locks and 18 aqueducts, including an 800-foot water bridge over the Genesee River, it was the greatest engineering feat of its day. It had also worked nothing less than an economic miracle. It had once cost more to ship a ton of goods 30 miles inland than all the way to England, and taken more than 3 weeks to move a ton of wheat from Buffalo to New York. Now, it took just 7 days, and the cost had been cut from $100 to less than $6. At the opening celebrations, DeWitt Clinton, the undisputed hero of the day, poured a keg of water drawn from Lake Erie into New York Harbor. The symbolism was lost on no one. All America now met in New York.
The mountains have been leveled. The valleys have been filled. Rivers and gulfs have been formed over them, which will unite the waters of the Hudson and the waters of the Atlantic with the waters of the remote West and constitute a river. The Reverend F.H. Cumming.
It just brought things alive in America as they had never done before. And that canal brought the seaborne Atlantic trade right up into the central of American Great Plains. It was a way west that only we had, and this harbor was the fulcrum between the great continent and the European world on the other side.
It made New York the only American city that connected Europe on one side with the heartland of the continent on the other. And that has been New York's strength ever since. It still is the major port of entry and transfer point for people flying from Europe to the rest of the country. You see New York, and then you see America.
This waterway did so much to pull the nation together. Now the goods from this whole vast region are flowing by canal boats through the Erie Canal and then down the Hudson River to New York City. So the New York City is becoming a kind of national city, pulling the country together. So there is one focus. The national capital may be in Washington, but the real economic capital is by common consent in New York.
The Erie Canal made New York the Empire State, and New York City the first real center of America. DeWitt Clinton had first imagined the great metropolis New York might become, then reshaped the
Okay, that's the video. Before you go, please in the chat room, put a question, a statement, something that interested you about this video you just saw. We'll use it to start the class on Thursday. So anything that struck you, anything that amazed you, anything that you learned, anything that you want to know more about, anything that you feel, wow, I never knew that, just put it in the chat room and we'll start our next class with that and continue on to doing a bit more on the Erie Canal as we sort of go through this section on causes of New York's greatness. Okay, I'll be reading your chats, so put them in right now. And big thanks to Stephen Weinstein for joining us. And I'll see you all in the chat room, and I'll see you all, Stephen and I will see you all Thursday. Stephen, you want to have any last words?
No, I like the video very much. I'd like to see the rest of it.
All right, we will. Stay with us and you'll see it all.
And it was good seeing Daniel Patrick Moynihan. I realize how much I missed him.
Yeah, he gets it right most of the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
In the chat room, we'll use the chat room as the beginning of our next class. We'll be doing some reading about the Erie Canal, and then you'll answer the questions that I raised on the canal. If you didn't get the questions, let me know. If you didn't get the handout 113A, let me know.
Okay.
Bye.
Take care. Thanks, Ivan. Be well.
Thank you, Mr. Weinstein, Dr. Weinstein.
Bye, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'll send back your papers as soon as I will. Probably
See you
by
later, Professor. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Send your stuff to Weinstein and to me.
Okay.